So Greg, this is live now. Just got to get this right. You just come here and have a look at that. Okay. And I'll stand there and tell me if the angles are right. Can we look good? Perfect. Yeah. Yep. So I think that's right. Let's just log in and just check the sound working. So, can you see it on yours? Just to check it's live.
It can take a minute or two, I found, to fill out.
So you're still busy in the office?
I just go in as the regular user. You put a date on too, I think.
Yeah.
Gonna edit it. Do you want a date on it?
Did you put a date on it?
No, I put this. Look, I'll show you. PMHC Mayoral debate.
Sorry, Mayor Ken, maybe that's what I need to put in.
Well, I can get rid of that.
Yeah, just use Potter's Mayoral debate.
Yeah. Do you want a date? I can put it in here.
Yeah.
In the description. 23rd, isn't it? 23rd, yeah.
But apart from that, so I read either way.
So that really my life's very simple. So I spent the last 4 days trying Billy was born with
So are you thankful? So what does it mean?
So normally so day 2.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was because I
There's a bit of a
it's a pinching
and then yeah, not that, but I was not that I'm a fan.
So that was interesting. But then my wife managed to get it on the speaker. And then it's always gradually. Well, that's from India now, so yeah, that's like 3 days ago. So
All the powder.
I watched that
so the room is so much pressure. Then you have to try and get it.
because I need to come out like that.
And you need to fold.
Yeah. I would overstart the road once and it's dry. And oh my god, this is To number one. Oh, okay. Fine. No worries. Yeah, good. I didn't read the agenda.
You okay? Okay. Oh. Helps if I turn the power on. Hello? Can everyone hear me okay? How about up the back? Can you hear me up there? Very good. All right, welcome to the mayoral debate for the Port Macquarie Hastings Council elections coming up on the 4th of December. We have all our 5 mayoral candidates up here tonight. We have Stephen Gates, Peter Pearson, Rachel Shepherd, Lisa Interman, and Nick Lipperback. We'll begin the evening by having a 3-minute introduction from each of the candidates, and then we'll go on to questions and answers. Our first speaker up tonight is Mayor Peter Pearson.
Thanks so much, Greg. So here we are on the verge of an election. I've been waiting for this day since basically 2016. I campaigned in 2016 to come into council against a fairly strong mayor and a councillor group, and my desire was to come in and make change. I wasn't elected, but I did take 30% of the primary vote. So I resonated with the community back then as to what the community was looking for, which was change. In 2017, 7 months later, the mayor, after he fought me so hard for his job back, resigned, and it caused a by-election. And my perseverance and persistence made me go forward again. And I stood before community and I asked again to consider me as the mayor. And this time I was elected. Since the day I walked in that door, I have honoured my promises to community. You gave me a mandate, and that mandate was to be honest, to hold the organisation to account. The thing is, behind closed doors, very different scenarios play out. We had a general manager who was the general manager of the then council. So regardless of the fact that you have a mayor in the top leadership position, unless you have a supportive council behind you, it's extremely difficult to get your policies or the community's desires across. What I want to say to you is that I'm back for a 3rd time, and it's because my job hasn't even started. I've spent 5 years waiting to get to the start line, and I'm asking for your support. I'm asking you for your support so I can support you. Thank you.
Next we have Stephen Gates.
Unfortunately, the joy of being the tallest person, I always have to adjust the microphone. Thank you. My name is Stephen Gates. I own a rural property outside Bybarra. We have a 500-acre cattle farm. My experience before then has been executive and senior management, either as a national human resource manager or industrial relations expert. And I set my own business up for 13 years in facility services, built it from nothing, and then sold it 13 years later and moved up here. And very thankful. Port Macquarie is a beautiful place, absolutely love it. Well, I think we have some issues with the existing council, and we're currently at a turning point. And that's a great shame. The key issue for voters, as I said, and this will come up in one of the questions, is do you retain the existing people or do you go for completely new people? And perhaps I'll just park that until we get to that question and I'll explore it there. What I would say is past behaviour is often the best indicator of future performance. And in that regard, I'd like to just give a brief report card on what this council and previous councils have delivered or failed to deliver. So in terms of your rates, since 2000 they've increased 344%. 344%. Charges are the same. They've increased by 312% in those years. The wages bill for council has similarly skyrocketed. And I'll talk about that when we get to that specific question. We look at what they've done. What this council has done is it's turned 40 unsealed roads now into four-wheel drive access tracks. Their policy is that you must own a four-wheel drive to get to your house. That's a pretty bad service delivery. The gravel resheeting of roads has changed from 1 in 8 years to 1 in 115 years. 4 generations of people. It will not last that long. Vegetation management, they want you to breach the Roads Act, section 183, to slash and mow the reserve outside your property. Rawdon Island Bridge, it failed. It failed because of council's negligence, full stop. And this is a council that wants you to vote those people back in. You might want to question whether that's a wise decision. In terms of the special rate variations, you've paid $173 million since 2000. We will show that council has dropped the special rate variations after 10 years. They're no longer using the funds for the purpose, but you're still paying for it in your rates. This year, you'll pay $13.9 million just in special rate variations. The budgets that they've been using for roads, you wonder why your roads have failed. Before they introduced the special rate variations, they cut the budgets by 20 to 30%. Thank you. More later.
Candidates, I'll knock on the table when you're getting close to the end, so you've got a bit of warning. Up next is Nick Lipperback.
Thank you, Steve. We've been playing microphone tag all night, no doubt. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nick Lipperback, more commonly known, I guess, over the past 18 years. I've lived in the Hastings region as Nick James through my media work over the 15 of the last 18 years. So I'm not going to talk a lot about myself, but I will mention, of course, we have a Hastings First team, which includes when we're looking at experience out in the real world, in terms of business experience, 30 years for Kerry Fox, my number 2. Linda Lenord, 30 years in education. Michael Clark, 40 years in finance. And Justin Hardy, 20 years in infrastructure. So if you're looking at the core business council, business, finance, education, infrastructure, and then I bring along the communication, we've covered all angles just about in terms of what we offer as a team. And I guess the last, well, it wasn't a short campaign, naturally, with the delays that we had. I guess we've also had a look and listen to a lot of people about what they've had to say about what's needed in our local area. A lot of listening is required, and I think that's where council has failed over the past couple of terms. So we now know that you're not happy with what's been going on, and there are obviously dozens of issues, but we've narrowed down to about 8 or 9 in terms of what really is important to the Hastings community. So we know that koalas matter, naturally. We're regarded as the koala capital of Australia. We know that economic development matters, affordable housing, that the communities are connected. We hear a lot about Camdenhaven and Warhope not feeling part of the LGA. Local business, putting them first. Shop local campaigns. Sporting amenities, we're running behind. Actions and results. Where's that been the last 4, 5, 6 years? The roads matter, as we know. Again, it's just the general business of council. We need to make sure we're up to date. Sustainable development. Yeah, we can't stop progress, but we can certainly ensure that it's not the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. We still need the open green spaces. Yes, we're still going to have the development, but we need to make sure we have a good balance. Pedestrian access, we want to make sure footpaths, make sure people can get across the road safely. Basic stuff, and of course, as was mentioned before, your rates. So we know there's a lot of work to be done, maybe a lack of planning over recent terms and years. So this is your chance with a new team, whether it's 6 new councillors and the 3 that are still there being returned, or whatever the case may be, maybe a whole new team. This is your chance now to make the change, get to the polling booth, and you're driving that change to ensure that we start getting ahead of the curve, that we start planning ahead in terms of what this region needs. Thank you.
Up next is Rachel Shepherd.
So like Nico and many of the candidates, I'm also running as a part of a team, and to me that's really important because even if I'm not elected as mayor, I do want to be a part of the team, and I want to be a part of the team for a long time to come. So I'm a local girl, sorry, my name is Rachel Shepherd and I'm running as an independent candidate for mayor in the upcoming local government election. So I grew up out of Papenborough and I moved away for work and study, and then I came back in 2018, moved to Bonny Hills to be near my family, my husband's family, as we started our own. And I was really concerned about what I saw in terms of the way that land development is happening, about the way that our economy has been shaped. And I've been in the unusual position where I can throw my hat in the ring. So that's what I'm doing. And as I've been out in the community talking about what's important to me, which boils down to a message of sensible, sustainable progress for our region, it turns out there's a lot of people who agree. So where I started in my engagement with council, it didn't come from a political family or anything like that. And so what happened is shortly after my child was born, I started noticing the science coming up around climate change specifically. And so I thought, okay, well, what does a person do about this? And so I started engaging with that issue the way I do and the way I have throughout my life, engaging with any difficult issue in a solutions-focused, action-focused way. And I brought that to council, and I had to take some time to find my feet, but very quickly that realised that council and government's a lot bigger than climate change. But of course, that sustainability and climate change need to be incorporated into decision-making for our community. And as that became apparent, that's how I approach things, and that's how I approached our community. I learned more. I used that starting point as a way to grow my knowledge about our community and about governance generally. So what I've learned in that process is that more than anything, community engagement and activation and genuinely engaging with people who disagree with you is one of the most valuable things you can do, because what you learn is how much common ground we have. We like to go and talk about progressives versus conservatives and right-wing and left, but I think there's a lot more we have in common. Talking truthfully about what I believe and the experience I brought forward the common ground. We all care about our future. We all care about our kids. We all want them to have affordable housing. We all want them to have jobs, and we all want to make sure they've got a safe environment to live in. So when we boil it down to that, and when we're willing to value, and we genuinely, from our heart, value difference and perspective and balance, then I think we're coming from the right place as a council. And it means that we have the best capacity possible to work within a team. My background, trade-wise, is as a psychologist. It doesn't make me qualified to be mayor, but it does bring something to the table, and I look forward to talking to you more tonight.
Our next speaker is Lisa Isman.
Good evening, everyone. Very good roll-up tonight. Very important event, and thanks to Greg for hosting these and also for making sure that they're screened so that people can see them later. I've been on council for 20 years. I've been deputy mayor for 6 years. Hi, Mike, up the back. I'm there because I believe that it's important. It's vitally important for the community that its council is functional and forward-thinking and forward-acting. My background is in science. I have a PhD. I'm a mother and grandmother and live in Wallhope. My only concern regarding the council is the best decisions for the community and that organisation. It's very easy for other people to come forward and say, criticise council for this or that, but I would like you to know that I would stand up, or rather, I would exchange with those people who have just criticised council and bring forward facts that counterbalance that and show to you that we in fact have a very good council when it comes to comparativeness. I spoke with a guy the other day, listened to him rant for about 20 minutes, and in the end he said, don't worry, I'm not being critical I hate all councils. We do in fact have a very good council. It is important. In this new council, we will have at least 6 new councillors. It's absolutely important that the mayor has experience and also the commitment to teamwork that is so vital. No one person knows everything. No one person should be instructing others what to do. It absolutely has to be a collaboration amongst all councillors, and I am dedicated to teamwork. I think I've demonstrated that over many years and serving under 5 different mayors. I've never been mayor. I'm looking for the opportunity to be mayor, to show you what I can bring, the good ideas, but also the teamwork with those councillors, with the staff, and importantly with the community. The mayor is not only a leader of the organisation, thank you, and the councillors, also a leader of the community. I will work with anyone to the best of our community benefit. I will discuss with anyone any issue because nobody knows everything. I have the experience. I believe that I offer level-headedness and also an understanding and knowledge of the council to take us forward. And I look forward to your vote and the opportunity to be your mayor. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to questions and answers now. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. We have a number of questions that have been registered with us. The first one comes from Les Mitchell.
Oh, yeah, they were going to do that.
Thank you, Greg. This question was asked at the first forum of council candidates. At the time, Peter, you answered in relation to a different piece of land, so I want to ask this question again. Do you support the acquisition of the core koala habitat at 147 Ruins Way by the New South Wales Government, recognising that if this land is cleared for residential development, it could mean the loss of the Port Macquarie wild koala population, the largest on the east coast of Australia? And to put that in context, we've just had a petition which has received 24,000 signatures to have this land protected by the state government. And Leslie Williams has undertaken to table that petition in Parliament, and it will be debated.
Yeah, lift it up a bit.
I don't know if it's, I think it's gone off.
Has it got off?
Yeah.
I think I'll keep going.
Okay.
Now, my question is, if the state government does not acquire this land, will you, as mayor, ensure that the land is never developed for housing or any other activity which would result in it being cleared, and how would you achieve that outcome? Thank you.
Yep. I think you're up first, Stephen. You finished the question.
I'll be cursing me again. 147 Women's Way. I know absolutely nothing about it. Not researched it, and I profess to not be an expert on koalas. So my approach is very simple, and it's the same way that I've tackled the 3 years of research in the council. And so I'm an expert in what council have done and how they've ripped everyone off, but I know a damn lot, and I'm very good at researching things. My typical approach, when I don't understand something is to get the experts in to brief me. Can't be an expert on anything. Once I understand that, then I can make an informed decision. If it is a significant koala population, then council can't fund it, the purchase of the land. As mayor, I don't believe you have the power to declare that land is not something which can be developed upon. That's a matter for the planning department and council. I stand to be corrected on that. But if it is a significant koala population, then I don't see any reason to not support an approach to state government to purchase the land. It raises the bigger question, and that is, when is enough development enough? At what point do we lose what we have and go back to living in the city? That's not what I want. We moved up here because of what we've got, and I don't want to lose that. Thank you.
Next we have Peter Pinson.
Thanks so much. 147 Ruins Way, Port Macquarie, 121,000 plus signatures. Not all from our region, obviously, because we don't have that many people in the region. But one thing I do know about politicians, I don't consider myself a politician, just a regular community member who put my hand up to be part of the council. But I would suggest that a politician with an election coming up in 2023 with that many signatures, wanting to save the urban koalas, especially coastal koalas in our area, I would put a bet on the fact that the state government will end up turning that into a koala sanctuary. This land, we have to remember, is privately owned, as is all land that is developed. I understand that development is something that we're all concerned about. Some more concerned, some more fearful than others. The thing is, state legislation overpowers a lot of what local government does. And at the end of the day, we can put up a fuss, we can go to the Land and Environment Court, and in fact, I'd like to have a crack at that, just to show our community that we're actually fair income about protecting the amenity and what we have. But I don't think I need to answer that question as mayor, because it's privately owned land. The owners have every right to receive a commercial interest and get money for it. If the state government is going to buy that, I fully support it. How do you not support the longevity of a native animal that our country is so well known for? So in answer to that question, yes, I do support that land being bought for koala conservation. Thank you.
Rachel Shepherd.
In short, yes, we support the acquisition. I'm sure everybody will. And we support the acquisition for the same reasons that I'll be actively working to do whatever I can do as mayor to ensure that we protect that land from development. And that's because, well, broadly speaking, if we apply our region-wide policy approach to any single issue, it bears out in this particular one. What we know is that our local koala population, of course, it has a natural intrinsic value at a time when our koalas are at risk, unfortunately, but also they do have economic, social and environmental value. So we're talking about a basic triple bottom line, which is basic good business these days. So applying a basic good business model if we want to monetize things. So when we think about the economic value of our koalas, our urban koala population, with subject matter experts advise us will go extinct in this area if this land is developed. They're a key part of our economy. We know people come here for our koalas, the koala hospital, the opportunity to see koalas in our urban areas. We know that our community feels a heartfelt connection to this species as a part of who we are and why we want to be here. And certainly I want my 3-year-old to be able to show her kids one day that we have koalas locally. And then, of course, the last part is the environmental perspective, which is koalas are actually a keystone ecological species. I hope I've said that right, because this isn't necessarily my language. but they play a really important role in our local ecology. So from a triple bottom line perspective, it's really appropriate that we're looking at supporting this land being retained for koala habitat. I do take issue with the implication that the decision to support that land being retained for koala habitat is purely a political one. I think when we look at that basic triple bottom line, there's a really great justification, and I think that's how we should be looking at it.
Nick, look at that.
Thank you again. So, of course, we've now worked out, it's currently not in local government hands, to have 20,000 plus people having signed the petition in record time over just a few days, and the fact that it's not just local people who signed the petition, but Australia-wide, perhaps even international for all we know, that is fantastic news, and again, proving that people want to save the koalas that we have left remaining, particularly after the bushfires, and naturally also want to ensure these corridors remain as well for the future. So, from what I've been told, because the petition has gone through and has been successful, the state member will now pursue this in Parliament. She's already met with the Minister for the Environment, and I've been told that Leslie Williams will not leave any stone unturned to acquire the land. So keep that in mind, that's a positive sign, and that's what we all hope will eventuate over the next 12 months, if not sooner, hopefully early next year. So we fully support this action at this point in time. This will also go hand in hand with the exciting new development in the Kawara Forest, where they're developing the Koala Hospital, will develop a new site, breeding centre and education centre to take your kids on tours, and again to enhance and develop further the koala tourism potential. And they'll still keep the Lord Street site, it'll be redeveloped. So again, we are the koala capital of Australia, let's keep it that way. Let's support what's happening here in terms of acquiring the land, and we won't even think about the negative if it doesn't happen. As we heard, state election coming up March 2023, let's just assume at this point in time it will happen. It'll be a great benefit for the local area. So in summary, council should we get in, when we get in, will fully support this particular acquisition of land. Thank you.
Please Brisbane.
I have quite a history with this particular piece of land, in the sense that one of the things that I'm very proud of in council, having done in council, was to encourage and lead to council in engaging and setting a biodiversity strategy in 2018. In 2019, I asked council to please survey the local area, our LGA, and find areas of land that would be important for biodiversity conservation. They came back in 2020 with a list of 20 properties in the local area. That was in a confidential session because we can't reveal that land, because that would damage our ability to perhaps use it for offsets or purchase it or whatever going forward. But one of those blocks of land in that 20 was 147 the Ruins Way. And council acknowledged at that time the absolute importance of that land to the local koala population, and recommended to the state government at that time, the end of 2020, that they purchase it. I know that there have been two other organisations who have similarly contacted the state government regarding this block of land. It is adjacent to the Lake Innes Nature Reserve. It's absolutely a natural progression that this largely uncut, unburnt 200 hectares of land gets it added to the National Parks estate. The state government have got 193 million that they're intending to spend on koala habitat purchase. This only costs 11 million, and so therefore it is absolutely logical that it be purchased. If not, then there are other avenues to pursue, but this must happen. The state government must commit themselves to purchase this land. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Lauren Edwards.
Thank you so much for allowing me to ask a question here tonight of the mayoral candidates. We've heard a little bit about council and the inefficiency that that is operating with from a couple of the mayoral candidates. So my question is, our council has 4 directors' roles, while many other councils in our region have just 3 or 2 even. These director titles in other councils are quite inspirational as well. They have titles such as Director of Sustainable Communities, Director of Sustainable Infrastructure, Director of Sustainable Environment and Economy, and Director of Livable Communities. Sorry. So could we run a more efficient council with just 3 directors perhaps? And isn't it time that we restructured council with directors' roles that actually reflected our community's aspirations like the other councils have done?
Stephen Gates.
Well, there's someone who loves me and someone hates me and putting me first. Well, that's okay, we'll do that. Thank you, Lauren. I thought a very astute question. If we look at the directors on average are on $250,000. They have a secretary as well. With on costs, you're probably looking somewhere between $400,000 to $500,000 a year just in that one role. If we look at the wages historically for council, when we went back to 99, 2000, we were paying $16.7 million in wages. We've now increased by 248%, and as at 1920, our wages bill is $41.5 million. You might ask the question, what extra services, what extra consultation did we get from that? You might ask the question, what extra direct operational staff working on roads and fixing them we got? And the answer is you got less. It's pretty simple. I don't support indirect staff who don't provide any value to you as the ratepayer. They need to justify their role and what they give to you. If they're not giving you any value, my view is they need to go. The other thing I would say, and this is in our policies, in our first 100 days and 1 year plan, is we support a 20% reduction in indirect staff in council. The average increase in wages bill is so $1.2 million a year. Every year it's going up by $1.2 million. They need to cut indirect heads. We also support the increase in direct operational staff who provide the services to the ratepayers. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Rachel Shepherd.
So thank you for the question, and I'll just repeat the question part. So could we run a more efficient council with just 3 directors? And isn't it time we restructured council directors' roles that reflect our community aspirations like other councils? So in terms of the thrust of that question, being efficiency and about making sure that council's activities, including names of roles, reflect community aspirations, absolutely support that. However, as a result of my engagement with council and community over the last few years, my perspective is that actually a strategic shift within council is well underway and has been underway for a couple of years actually. And I think you can see that with the culling down significantly of the strategies that they have, and also looking at how they've developed a hierarchy of how the strategies fit together. And that's been important to me because I've been looking at these strategies and going, okay, well, actually, how do we get better change for our community? Because ultimately that has to be policy and strategy driven, otherwise you're going to be doing ad hoc and unplanned activity everywhere, which is very inefficient. So the one point I'd say is that there is a strategic shift underway, and I could see that sort of action potentially coming out at some point anyway. The other point that I'd make is that the new CEO only came in earlier this year, and she has quite broad support within the community. And I'm sure there's detractors as well, and that's fine, that's good actually. But with that broad-reaching support, we can see that she has quite actively started taking a transformation approach to council and council structure. She's brought in a transformation arm, an executive, I can't remember the exact title, but an executive for transformation. My understanding is that there's talk of how council is going to be restructured in order to cope with the population growth with infrastructure delivery and economic development planning into the future. So I think now's not the time, actually, especially with the new council body. We have 6 new councillors most likely. I don't think now's the time to be making those sorts of changes. We need a bit of time to settle in and let the current shifts play out with a good new team on board.
Please, Ruth.
The new council, in its first 6 months, I think it is, needs to adopt a new structure. So this is a very appropriate question. Should it be four directors? Should it be 3 directors? 2? Somebody has even suggested. I think it's less important than the number as the function that drives that structure. So when the new councillors go in, they will be establishing what are their priorities, what do they want to do, therefore how might we do this, what is the functional basis that we need in order to deliver what we've told the community that we want. A flatter structure could be better. Maybe we need more managers, upper-level managers, rather than directors. This is a question that the new council needs to discuss with the CEO when they go in, so I don't want to preempt that. In terms of inspirational titles, absolutely. Why do we need to be purely engineering in our focus? We must be more connected with the community, and inspirational titles will help that. As to the cost of the staff and the number of staff and the jobs that they do, again, I say I will exchange documents with anyone who wants to challenge the efficiency of council. Of course, we must have continuous improvement. We must be improving as we go along. But nevertheless, I will challenge those who are questioning council as to perhaps the exaggeration that might be being put into their criticism. Council needs to continuously improve. Perhaps the new structure is the way to go. Definitely the new priorities and vision of the new councillors should be driving that, and that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
Nick Lipperback.
First of all, to start with, I'm sick to death of being compared to other councils. Sick of hearing how Coffs City Council has all these wonderful, exciting developments. Sick to death of hearing how many grants Kempsey Shire Council is getting, and we're hearing relatively nothing about the Port Hastings region. So, getting back to the question, although we are obviously being compared, until I get into council and the newly elected councillors get in, it's hard to know at this point in time. So working as a team with the other councillors, we need to discuss the merits, naturally, the roles and the responsibilities, and being able to properly serve the community. If a restructure is needed, of course, that makes sense. I think they think to understand best is all LGAs have unique needs and unique communities. So we've got to make the right decision for our community. So if we need 4 directors to get the work done, then that's what we need. Okay? If we decide to reduce the number of directors, then we will, and most importantly, we'll also explain the decision why to the local community. Thank you.
Peter Pinson.
Thanks. I'm just going to lay it on the table. Let's get real here, people. Our CEO walked into an absolute basket case of a council, and we are being compared to other councils because other councils have actually got their act together. The thing is, our CEO came in February after the general manager left, who was spoon-fed and dummy-sucked
by previous councils and looked after, and you can, Madam Deputy, you can disagree with me, but you were part of the problem, is the thing that we actually had councillors who actually protected the general manager, not all councillors, but we had councillors who protected the general manager and the general manager who protected the councillors. And how can I say that? Is because I was there and I saw it for the last 4 years. Stephen Gates, you've actually got some really good things to say, and I really look forward to speaking to you in greater detail later on. But the thing is, we are a growing council. It's up to the CEO as to the level of staff that she's going to require. I work extremely well with the CEO. In fact, I have her full support, and that's more than I can say for the last 4 years that I've had. I'm committed to ensure that our community gets value for money for its rates, but I'm also committed to stop the BS in council and make sure that we're actually doing our job. It's not that hard. We're here to be directed by our community as to how you want to live going into the future. That's our role. And then we're there to direct the CEO and her staff to make that happen. I've got an amazing team backing me. I have every confidence in the 5 people that I am lucky enough, or sorry, 4 people and myself, that I am lucky enough to be able to work with. And 2 of them are previous councillors. Sharon Griffiths, very experienced, this will be her 3rd term. So we're the only council team that can actually start on day 1 without having to learn the ropes. Thanks.
Our next question comes from Phil Lloyd.
My question is, if elected mayor, how would you ensure council genuinely involves community in decision making rather than merely ticking the consultation box for a decision already made? And how the council and councillors are actually made accountable to residents for the decisions made?
Stephen Gates.
Thank you, Phil. It's nice to have someone that's my height. Look, I think this is a really interesting question, and it really tackles some of the fundamentals of council. There is no transparency in this council. If it wanted to be transparent, it could do like some of the other councils do. It will publish 10-year plans for roads. It will show how the money's, where the money's getting sourced from, special rate variation, grant, general revenue, developer contributions, absolute transparency. You cannot go onto their website and find a program that gives you an entitlement to a service. You cannot even find a document on there which explains in detail how road repair is done, how it's calculated. This is really simple, basic stuff. And the simple reason is, if they become specific, they become accountable. They want ambiguity. That needs to change. There are no KPIs directly linked to the delivery of service to you as the ratepayer. It's a fundamental omission. Now, I'll give you one example of road reseals. Let me talk about accountability. Let's talk about road resealing. You wonder why your road's so bad? So in 2009-10, there was no road resealing done whatsoever. Previous to that, they had a 10% requirement as a target per year, 87.5 kilometres. 2011-12, they did 1.79%. So they were 70 kilometres short of their target. Here you think they pick it up the next year. 2012-13, they did 6%. 2013-14, they did 3%, not 10%. 14-15, they did 4%. And then what they did is they got really cluey because people like me were starting to look at things, and they stopped publishing it. Now, is that true accountability? Is that transparency? No. Thank you.
Please recommend.
Well, the first way to ensure that, sorry, Lauren, I just pulled out the microphone. The first way to ensure that council does genuinely involve the community is for councillors to be involved in giving the instructions to the staff as to why they are going out into the community to consult. That involves determination, dedication by the councillors to make sure that that happens. As Mayor, I would certainly take that as a KPI. Has council merely ticked the box on consultation? Absolutely, there are many examples where this happens. But I would also like to say that there are many examples when council does go out and genuinely consult with the community, particularly on long-range plans where they're setting the strategy for a certain program of activity. Council goes out in that case with a blank sheet. They're looking to the community to come back with principles and goals that you are after setting. Unfortunately, we very rarely get a great turnout at such consultations. So council needs to do that much better. We need to engage much more with the community and better, smarter with the community when we're doing our large scale planning. We've done that very much better in the last couple of years, where we definitely do have much better integration between our different strategies. We've talked generally about human growth and development principles rather than roads and kilometres. We will continue to do that under my watch and to do it better. But how do we become accountable? We explain and we document, and that will certainly be a high priority for my role, that we explain our decisions and then account for them in numbers to the community. Thank you.
Please look back. Be careful of that cord.
I will be careful of that cord. Did I unplug you?
No, you didn't unplug anything.
Very good.
Greg, that's an occupational health and safety issue. You need a cone, a safety cone just there. To answer the question, well, the council seems to have done a reasonable job in seeming to consult the community. The issue is most of these initiatives are, as you say, just a tick in the box. Most have never been costed, so let's make sure these initiatives are costed before any community consultation is done, and in fact ensure that these initiatives are taken to the community first. So what we're hearing is, it appears that council is talking to consultants to come up with the ideas, and then they say, yep, that's the one, let's take it to the community and let them know what we're doing. And the community's going, what's this? No one told us about what's happening yet. So I think they've got it the wrong way around at this point in time. So why not talk to the community first, get their ideas, their proposals, take them to council, narrow it down to a couple, let the consultants then cost it, and then vote on what the best decision would be for the community. So stakeholder engagement is key. Feedback from stakeholders must be taken into account first. Accountability must be managed by putting key performance indicators, KPIs, to all key council positions. Thank you.
Rachel Shepherd.
Okay, so I've spent the last couple of years on the community side of the community engagement side of things, so I feel like I have a fairly unique perspective on this. And first and foremost, what I've gained from that experience is actually very high regard for council staff and a very high regard for councillors. Even though I don't agree with the councillors or the mayor, the presiding mayor all the time, I have immense respect for the enormous amount of time they need to put in and the community engagement they do that's not visible to the broader community. So a version of this particular question was put to our group by Preserve the Hastings, which is the leaders come together at the Orbital Alliance. And I know they weren't pleased with our position on the Orbital Road, which is available on our website as well. But we certainly gave them an extensive answer to this question. So extensive, I don't think I can answer it here. I think it was about a page long in regarding to the community engagement side. So I'm going to put those actions up. We'll put it on our latest news and our website so you can have a look at that. But really what it comes down to, I think, is the community being aware of what are the points that you actually can make change. So that's the community side of it. The community needs to be aware of how do you help make change, what are the opportunities. The other side of it is having councillors who are really, who are very well acquainted with community values and therefore able to drive those community values being embedded in strategy and policy, and then of course coming to life in decision making. Unfortunately, all of this sounds very boring. I wish I had something a bit more sexy to say about it, but ultimately I do believe this is what it comes down to. One of the key actions that I feel most excited and passionate about that has come out from, or put down as a part of the actions put to Phil and others, is about taking council to the community. And they are doing more of this, and I think that's partially because of the scrutiny they've been under by people affected by the Orbital Road over the last few years. They know they're going to be seen and they need to be accountable to our community. So please do look at our website for the rest of it.
Peter Gibson.
Over the last 4 years as Mayor, I have genuinely engaged with the community, and I've gone out and been a big part of the community, and I've asked them questions. I've asked them how the businesses are going, what they think about development. Councillor Griffiths and I have, and there's some information or a question about this a little later on. You know, we sit in the development assessment panels and we listen to what people are putting up as objections. You can only read the room when you're in the room, actually. There's no point being out on the other side. You've got to be up at the coalface with your community to know what they're thinking. The organisation, though, is clumsy and has been in the past, and the CEO, again, remarkable woman. We're so lucky to have her, and she's making some amazing changes. This new council is going to be extremely lucky to work with Dr. Claire Allen. Our community is extremely lucky to have a woman like this actually run our organisation. So what we need now is to be extremely lucky that our community votes the right people in to make sure we align all of that so she can hold her staff to account, and through her, as the Mayor, I can hold her to account with the KPIs and the councillors. So Team Pinson are very much looking forward to doing that. We've got the experience, as I said, 3 councillors who know how the organisation works. And more importantly, where the organisation doesn't work. Transparency is very important for me. I'm transparent in my conflicts of interest, in my day-to-day life. I understand how the community has the right to know. Hence the reason why this 147 Pacific Drive, or sorry, I probably got the address wrong, but the Pacific Drive development needs to be shown to our community as to what actually went on behind those closed doors. These closed door meetings should not occur unless they're absolutely legally vital. We shouldn't be shoving things behind a door and then not telling our community about it.
Our next question comes from Bob Preston.
Thank you, candidates, for taking questions. I just want to make an observation up front. The reality is the rhetoric we hear from council doesn't match the reality. And let me give you an example. Front treatment works are supposed to be operating now for the new development area over there, and it's been pushed back 2 years. What's going on? Critical infrastructure, and I go onto the website and I put the sheets of paper up And the date's been changed just like that. Something isn't right. I hear the rhetoric about how wonderfully we're going, but we're not. My question is this. What will you do to ensure in both short-term and long-term planning that ensures that developments are only approved that are sympathetic to delivering on the ever-increasing value in our society of the environment as a whole, that maintains sustainability, amenity, quality of life, and a sense of place that's closely tied to the high-level protection of our natural beauty and the value of the surrounding environment, including already developed local neighbourhoods that are under threat from developments. And let me tell you also, it took the last CEO of council a year to reply to a letter to me about the conduct of two council officers who agreed with a development, and it didn't even go through council. Thank you.
Peter Gibson.
Beauty Bob, thank you for that question. What am I going to do if I'm invited back into the job? I'm going to ensure that the $347 million that we've got squirreled away, that is set aside for the treatment plant works at Drumstar, for the water filtration plants, for the intersections and the signalisations of our intersections, and all that money that has come as a result of the development that we've been seeing over many years is actually spent. And this is the thing, you're going to hear from other candidates, oh, it's earmarked for things. Well, staff could not provide me with a resolution of council where it showed me that it was a council priority for any of these things. So if it's set aside for the treatment plant works at Drumstar, when? You know, it's already got away from us. The horse has bolted. It's out the gate. It's down the paddock. We need to start building this infrastructure because the people are going to keep coming. I want to talk about amenity. I want to talk about the concerns people have. Sharon Griffiths and I attended a site. Same old story. Houses being shoved into a leftover piece of land at Lake Cat-Eye. They thought 6 houses were going on there, but the developer has turned it to 9 now. 9 houses. No infrastructure for garbage to be picked up. If, God forbid, a fire happens in this area, the fire truck can't even get in there. What are we allowing to have happen to our area? I've been listening to this. I've been talking to staff about it since day one. The thing is, state government legislation overarches and cancels out at times council legislation, but we need to review our urban growth management strategy. Number 1, it's outdated. We need to review our local environmental plans because we need to protect the environment that these plans are affecting. And thirdly, our development control plans. So we need to set the agenda for developers, not the other way around.
David Gates.
Thank you, Greg. Peter, I thought you elaborated on the legislative planning documents very well. Let me tell you a story. And one of the things that I came in and talked very early on about is, what do we want Port Macquarie Hastings to be? Do we want it to be a city? Or do we want what we have at the moment? One of my fondest memories of growing up with my grandparents was jumping in their gold Kingswood sedan and driving down to Bondi Beach, and we would park a metre from the sand, and we never got charged parking. And they are great memories. And I go back there now, you can't even find a parking spot, and if you can, it's going to cost you $30 for 3 hours. It's just ridiculous. I'm a Tassie boy. I remember when they introduced 5-cent parking meters into Devonport. there was a riot outside the council chambers. If we keep increasing this community up and up and up, that is what you will get. Paid parking. You won't be able to find a parking spot. You go to the beaches and they're going to be overcrowded. There needs to be a sensible conversation on when is enough enough. And that really needs to happen. I'm no expert in this. And the one person out of all of the candidates I really applaud on their very diverse, well thought out views is Rachel Shepherd on this. I think she brings, you know, some phenomenal insights, which I don't have. And I'm very quick at acknowledging my shortcomings. And that's a good thing. You need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and defer to others. But as mayor, you want to have an overarching concept on where we want to go to guide the conversations. Thank you.
Please, Ruth.
Thanks for the question, Bob, and I will get back to you regarding the Trumpster plant and what's happened with it. Yeah. This is a really complex, important and difficult question because our local area does not decide whether or not we're a growth area. We've been designated a growth area by the state government. We don't decide how many people come here necessarily. Talk a little about how we might. How many people come here? People come here because they love the place. Anyone who is a newcomer to the area says, I came here because I thought it was fantastic, but I don't want any more people here. That's an illogical comment. We are a growth area, designated as such. We have a very entrepreneurial real estate industry here locally. They will certainly promote their own business, they will promote their own profit, etc. It's up to council to manage and control where the land is that they can develop. This question is a little bit back to front. What will you do to ensure that developments are only approved that are sympathetic to delivering on these values? We have to go back before the approval process. That is way too late. When developments are approved, they've already been zoned, gone through a planning process. We need to be back earlier. So we've got two jobs to do. One is how to manage the growth that has already been approved and is about to hit this area. And secondly, how do we plan for future growth? That is where we can make the assurance that we will in fact be able to protect the amenity, quality of life, environment, etc. That is where council will once again, as it did back in the early 2000s, come to the community and say, what is it that you want and what kind of lifestyle are you looking for in the area generally? Thank you.
Rachel Shepherd.
So our motto is sensible, sustainable progress. So we agree that in terms of the legislative capacity, we have to do anything. We can't decide if we grow. However, we can decide how we grow. So how we grow needs to be in a sensible, sustainable way, in short. And we do need to set the agenda for developers. We need to shape how the population growth happens to make sure that it's compatible with our future generations having housing, compatible with having jobs, and also compatible with having a safe environment that's beautiful to be in. So I do want to note that the Mayor has put on record in the Focus magazine that a part of how they'll approach these things is reducing green tape. And so it's good to keep in mind what that typically means, because it wouldn't typically be sustainable development, right? So how sustainable land development is actually realised? Well, we think this is important enough that we've made it one of our policies that you can find on our website and put a lot of thought into that. So I really encourage you to have a look. But in terms of how sustainable land development is actually realised, what we're looking at, again, is the boring stuff. It's about strategy. Because that's how you set the agenda for developers. That's how you give a really clear signal about what we're going to accept as a community in terms of how we grow. So we're looking at, yes, the urban growth strategy, the housing strategy, which is currently in its draft form. So next year, early next year, I reckon that's going to be coming back for discussion, and that's where we need the community very active to say what you want the housing strategy to look like for our community into the future. The other opportunity you have right now is around what our economic development looks like into the future. There is a draft economic development strategy on public exhibition right now, and I think it demonstrates the shift the council is undergoing at the moment, where the subject matter experts in regional development have provided us with a draft strategy that identifies global factors. So look at our website for more, because this is what we're passionate about.
With the back.
Or it's always hard to follow Rachel on the subject matter that she's so passionate about, but we'll give it a shot anyway. So it's a very hot topic at the moment, as we know. Short and long-term planning, vital to our vibrant community. There should be no closed-door decision-making, which I'm sure you would agree with at the monthly council meetings. And I and my team will strive to make this happen. When I say my team, I'm not expecting necessarily my 5 Hastings First teammates to come through, but whoever gets on council, that would be my team, and we'll make this happen. So sympathetic development is something we all want. Working together with new councillors and council staff on a long-term plan to ensure future planning is sympathetic to our local LGA. It is the key. Perhaps now is time to look at the current council community strategic plans towards 2030, and also the Plan Think 2050. They need to be revisited by the new team, and of course we need to work it all in with urban growth strategy, housing strategy, economic development strategy. There's a lot of work here to be done, but again, new team, new year, new future for the local area. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Kenneth Townsend. Just give us a moment. There. I'll read it for Annette. She was here. At previous Meet the Candidates forums, Peter Pinson stated that we had to vote for her whole team to get in so she can run an effective council. Do all mayoral candidates feel the same way? If that doesn't happen, can you work with other candidates here tonight if they are elected? How will you lead a team of 9 councillors, as other great leaders have done, and engage with all those elected by the residents to be an effective council? And Peter, you're the first
Oh,
one.
fantastic.
I'm not going to be frustrated. I've been frustrated all night. You can probably tell it in my voice. Disappointed is really what I am. It just comes across as being frustrated because, you know, I had a vision to somehow be part of the team with some of the councillors moving forward in my term as mayor. And I knew I'd have to work really hard, and I did. I showed myself belly. I laid on my back. I was submissive when I first got in, and I said, give it to me. I said to all of them, give it to me. I've campaigned against you, and here I am now. Thing is, they didn't, the majority of them didn't want that from me. I won't say all councillors, and I won't say who was and who wasn't, but you'll understand. Thing is, what I learned in 4 years is that if you do not have the numbers, and many a mayor at many conference that I've been at, the first thing they ask you as a mayor, so do you have the numbers? No. No, I don't. Oh, Joe, how do you get on then? I don't get on, actually. I have to fight for everything for our community. I have to fight for my point of view. And I'm sick of fighting. I just want to get the job done. But I'm going to be real here, and these other candidates cannot speak to what it's like to be in a chamber where you are ineffective because you haven't got support. I'm not saying that I have all the answers. I'm not saying that I want to run the show. I want to be with a team that has the heart of our community at every decision they make. Hence, I am so fortunate to have the likes of Adam Roberts, a previous Deputy Mayor and Councillor. Councillor Sharon Griffiths, this will be her 3rd term when elected. Daniel Mortman, a community champion for the lake, which we all love and want to see fixed. Josh Slade, who is also an entrepreneur and employs people, a businessman, and myself. And will I work with whoever is elected? Of course I will, because it will have changed. After this election, it will have changed. And I'll tell you what, there's one person below the line and he's worth your vote, and it's John Bailey. He's been the MN cameraman and he's seen it all, including the disgraceful behaviour of this past council. Thank you.
Stephen Gates.
Thank you. Interesting question. And probably let me tell you a story first. For those that know me, I'm pretty big on stories. When I rowed a boat from New Zealand back to Sydney in 2007-8, we had 4 people on the boat, 2 girls and 2 guys. When I advertised for people, all I was focused on was what you brought to that boat. What is your expertise? What can you give? I'm not an expert of everything, and you need to have people who will speak up and bring skills to the table. In my past as a national HR and industrial relations manager, the key skill sets in that role is listening, consulting, and negotiating. And one thing I'm very big on is facts. Put the facts up, see what people say based on the facts. I think there's a great value in having independent members, not tied to any political party or any group. I see being part of a bloc, 4 or 5 in council, will stifle conversation. It will facilitate bad decisions. It's a very dangerous signal. Peter called out John Bailey. I applaud John Bailey. I think he would be such a valuable contribution to this council. One thing independent people will do is they will challenge the past. I don't see any of the existing people telling you what actually happened in the past. I don't see anyone telling you in the Glasshouse inquiry that William found that the special rate variation for roads wasn't spent on roads, somewhere between 29 and 56 million. I don't see anyone telling you that before the SRV came in, they decreased the budgets for roads and everything else by $200,000 to $300,000. You need people to challenge accepted past decisions. Thank you.
Nick Lippert.
Wrong list.
I wrote that
Wrong
one, did I?
list.
Yes, sure, I'm sure.
That's all right, no worries.
Okay, so the crux of the question is, can you work with other candidates? Based on previous experience at a smaller scale, I'd say I could do that very successfully, yes. I was president of the Hastings Cricket Association at one time. They had dealt with a fellow who'd been in there for 5 years. He was all about himself and his own agenda, yet no one wanted to take him on. So we're talking about teams, groups, representatives from right across the Hastings region, representing their teams, not being happy, turning up to the monthly meetings, not happy about what was going on. And eventually they said, listen, we've got to take this bloke on and take him down. And so they said, look, who's going to step up? And they all looked around the room and said, Nico, you're a good bloke, why don't you give it a crack? So put my hand up, won that vote. The next 12 months we worked our bums off. We've got everyone working together. And you're going to have the issues. You're going to have people who don't always agree with you. But the point is, you've got to explain to them, communicate, listen to their ideas and suggestions, work out what you've got in the kitty, how much money you've got to do your projects, to make sure that everyone's happy as best you can. You can't always make people happy, as we know. So in that respect, that was a great successful point in terms of what I did as a volunteer for that association. I worked as a club secretary for 12 years. The unsung heroes of sporting organisations. The president might be the head of the club. It's the club secretary that runs the club. Puts up with the doofuses on a daily basis and makes sure everything else works properly. Also treasurer of the Oxley Oval Clubhouse Construction Committee. They were short on people. Again, they looked at me, they said, Nick, you've done a bit of work with volunteers and committees. Would you mind helping us out? We got that done with a bit of assistance as well with a number of organisations to get that job done. Sitting on the planning for 10 years, within a couple of years it was built, which is fantastic. So basically what I'm saying is there is no I in team. There is no blaming anyone or having excuses. It's all about ensuring that you can work together, and it's easy to do if you communicate what you want done. And there should be no politics at the local level. Regardless of, yes, we have the Greens and everyone else appears to be independent. And there's a lot of questions out there saying, are you truly independent? All I can say, on my heart, I am. The point is, at a local level, sure, state and federal, you'll have your parties. At a local level, you're a community representative, okay? You're dealing with the local issues and trying to find the best outcome, the best benefit for the majority of the ratepayers. So no politics at a local level, no blocking. There should be an even spread of talent from the various people who are putting their hands up for election. Thank you.
Please recommend.
Absolutely not. I do not feel that you must be voting for all of any one team. We've got a great bunch of candidates here, absolutely fantastic. We will end up with a really good council, almost guaranteed, I would suggest. Can I work with the other candidates here tonight if they are elected? Absolutely. Nick was talking before, and I love the stories that Nick and Stephen come up with, but for me it's about principles, it's about what is it that is going to guide us. I don't agree with the notion that what we need to do is know what we need to do. What we need to do first off is know that we're absolutely committed, all of us, councillors, to the community, to making the very best decisions. We need to be having adult discussions about including different points of view. Not anyone knows everything. We absolutely need more than one mind, more than one voice, coming together, discussing where it is that we want to go. That is what we want, is the good for the community, and then all other discussion is open for discussion. Sharing skills, acknowledging each other's skills, spending time to actually discuss matters. I'm not going to go back and talk about what it was like in the last council, but suffice to say that if I was mayor, we would be having regular councillor discussions. We would be spending time together discussing what it is that we are able to do. We would be sharing our skills. We would be acknowledging and respecting each other for those skills and for the different points of view that we bring forward. We then go into the council meeting to make a decision that hopefully we've almost got sorted before we get into the room, but we finalise the details in that room so that everybody has their voice and gets their point of view heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Look, from the outset, I want to say that I think that everybody who's running for council and the people who have been on council are there at least partially because they care about our community, right? So council wage or salary is $25,000 a year. I looked at it because I knew how much work I was doing to try and understand what was going on before I decided to try and run. And it's not much money when I think it's 2 to 3 days a week of work, potentially on top of other work. So, and I think that's it. So I raised that point that actually I think everyone is here with the community at heart, because I think it's really problematic when it's proposed that that's not the case. And when you're in the council chambers and it's deemed that disagreement is actually a personal attack, or that disagreement is reflective of not caring about the community, that sets you up to not be able to use the diverse perspectives that a team brings. And I am concerned that that's what I've observed over the last few years, and that's one of the reasons I'm running, is because I do believe what we need first and foremost is a team. A part of what makes a team work is having a leader who is interested in people with different perspectives. That's what I've been doing that's what I've been doing my whole life, actually. I care about what people think. Because that's how I grow myself. In this case, I care about what a team of councillors think, because that's how we make the best decision for our community. I've been incredibly concerned over the past 3 years watching council meetings and see periods when, or see decisions where councillors, including the mayor, have voted a particular way without having made any comment. So they disagree with the decision that's been spoken at length by other councillors, but they haven't brought forward the information that makes them disagree. If you've got information that makes you disagree, you should bring it forward so we can make a better decision for our community. That's how I approach leadership always, and that's how I'll approach it in the next council term.
Our next question is from Kathy Reagan. Kathy?
We have had a previous mayor resign to further his career, and more recently other councillors resigned without completing their term of office. Allowing for emergencies or medical issues that may occur, as a candidate, will you guarantee that you will serve a full term if elected and not resign to run for another political office or to further your career in the private sector? Thank you.
Please recommend.
First off, thank you, Kathy, for inserting the words about emergencies. It makes the question much more reasonable. Yeah, the answer is, will you guarantee? Yes. Barring emergencies, I will serve my full term if elected, and I will not resign to run for another political office or to further my career in the private sector. That is the whole of my answer, but I would like to just, without revealing another person's personal information, nevertheless acknowledge that it is almost impossible for somebody to run a business if they've got people arriving with bearing grievances from council and attacking them at their place of business. I would consider that to be an emergency. One has to look after one's own business and cannot put oneself up to continuing attack like that. I'm aware that that is the reason for, part of the reason for a couple of councillors leaving, and I find that very reasonable and appalling that members of community would go and personally attack a person's business and their person because of a difference of opinion. This is again about teamwork. This is about acknowledging that we live in a community of 85,000 people. People will have differences of opinion. It is acceptable to have differences of opinion. We should be strong enough and adult enough to deal with that and not to lash out destructively upon other people just because they have differences of opinion. There have been many times when I've thought about leaving. It's not easy being in council, but nevertheless, I have been here. It's character building, I can tell you. And yes, I assure you, I will not be resigning for other than emergency reasons, if that happens. Thanks.
Rachel Shepherd.
I've already put a great deal of organisation into preparing life to be able to fulfil this role for the next few years, and I can absolutely commit to not resigning barring emergencies for private sector or other levels of government. So I do want to use some of the time to respond to some of the issues we've heard about tonight. So in regards to rates, our team has spent a lot of time at the group that I'm running with, Greg Freeman, Linda Elborn and Ethan Francis, have put a lot of time into researching our position on various things. In regards to rates, I'd like to make the point that Port Macquarie Hastings Council residential, business and farm rates are all roughly on par or less than the councils similar to us along the coast. Coffs, Kempsey, Mid-Coast, Armadale, they're the main ones. So they're roughly on par. So they might be too high in terms of challenging cost of living wise. However, they're absolutely comparable to surrounding areas. That doesn't mean they're necessarily being spent in the best way possible, but that's a part of why we need a good team in place. So in regards to the reserves and this supposed $347 million cash stash, that's not an accurate description of what's there. Yes, some of the projects are earmarked. No, they're not necessarily being resolved to be spent in a particular way. However, they have been considered in regards to the strategic priorities of our area. It's extremely important that we have honest and informed discussions about what money is able to be spent on. Council has a great deal of reserves in place because it's a water authority, because we've had a huge amount of development happening and population growth. And we need those funds there not to just suddenly be spent on particular projects, but actually to be invested appropriately in order to secure loans, in order to do the conceptual and design work, in order to then get more state and federal funding. We're not going to fund all of this infrastructure by ourselves. So we need to be addressing that appropriately and in a financially responsible way.
Nick, look at that.
So in short, or in summary, will I stay for the entire term? The answer is yes. Obviously, like most of us, we've all put a lot of work into getting to this stage. I've lived here 18 years, have a family, 2 kids, 17 and 20. We want to see this place develop slightly without overdeveloping and become, it's a fantastic place to live, and we don't want the overcrowding. And through my media work, I've lived initially in Sydney, moved down to Goulburn, it was freezing, went down to Devonport and Tassie, no offence, it was freezing. Moved to Lithgow, over the Blue Mountains, pretty cold. Up to Coffs, that was okay. But only stayed there 15 months. But 18 years now as a local resident, I'm settled. Only bought a new home 2 months ago. Happy to stay here, happy to see this area blossom as it should, and to make sure that your ratepayer money obviously goes to good use and makes the best environment for all of us to live in. So like the others, I won't resign unless for emergencies. As Rachel said, one runs for the position of mayor and a councillor to make a difference, and that's what we want to do. Myself, again, I want to be, the team wants to be your voice for your community, for your future. It's not for the dollars. Most of us have done a lot of volunteer work in the past, and we like it, strangely enough, despite the hours away from families, whatever the case may be. And so this is just the next step for a lot of us, that we want to see good things happen in our local community. So that's why we're standing, and that's why we're there for the entire term, and I'm not getting ahead of myself, for the next 2 or 3 terms. Thank you.
Peter Peterson.
I got a bit lost in that question, because I thought it was about would we resign, and then rates and other things that come into it. So would we resign? I don't give up easily. I hope I've shown you that over the last 4 years. There's a rumour going around. I don't know if it started in the State Member's office, but it came from somewhere, that I was going to, I was going to run off and join the circus at the state government level. Nothing could be further from the truth. That is not my higher life plan. My plan is I've bought a caravan, and I'd like to, for the next 2 years, 8 months, I'd like to work steadily with my fantastic team, Pinson, Adam Roberts, Sharon Griffiths, Daniel Mortman and Josh Slade. And then I'd like to get your confidence that we actually know what we're doing, so you'll re-elect us for another term. Then, in all honesty and sincerity, I'd like to retire, because by then I'll be in my early 60s, and I think I will have earned it by then, and I'll have more grandbabies to love and look after. So that rumour, whoever started it, you know who you are, absolutely unfounded. As for rates, I just want to make a comment. We are one of the fastest growing regions in New South Wales. Rooftops are going up quicker than we can bank the money, because for every rooftop we have, for every room under those rooftops, we are raking in the dollars. So this notion that our greedy council can't afford to cut you a bit of slack as ratepayers is unfounded. And what the new council will understand when they get in, that five people will make a decision on behalf of the community after they've listened to the community, and 5 people will resolve in a decision of council. And if that is to freeze rates, just freeze them, I'm not saying cut them, freeze any further IPART rate increase, that's what we will do. And we will spend the money on infrastructure that has been underspent for the last 10 years. Thank you.
Stephen Gates.
Finally last, I'm enjoying this. Like Rachel, I've been planning the transition to becoming mayor. I've sat down and had a conversation with the cows and the dogs and said, you know, if I get mayor, I'm going to have to leave you guys for a bit. And they seemed not unhappy about it, unfortunately. I'm lucky, I've already resigned. I sold my business and I resigned. But why am I running for mayor? And for that, you need to understand me. What I hate with a passion is bullies and thugs and people who treat others with disrespect. And that's what these councils have done. Yeah, I'm lucky I can spend 3 years researching what council's done. You know, I'm lucky that my wife supports me. That's a fantastic position. Yeah, and I respect what she does every day. I'll be in this role for the term of mayor. I have no desire to leave. I expect that I will only be in for 1 term. Why do I say that? Let me tell you a story. When I worked for Chubb as a national HR manager, George Chin was the general manager. He had a philosophy that no senior manager should be in their role for more than 2 years. And his argument was that if you change your roles every 2 years, you're going to start afresh with passion, no preconceived ideas, and vigour. Whether he's right or wrong, that comment always stuck with me. I see this council as being a council that needs change, and it needs it fairly quickly. So I plan to put all my efforts in as mayor for this term to start that transitional process. The council beyond that will hopefully follow through, but the die will have been cast. Thank you very much.
Our next question is from Chrissa Wilkinson. Is Chrissa here? She was here before. Right. I'll ask her for her. Development applications are primarily decided on by just council staff. Only major or controversial developments are even made known to councillors. As developments are supposed to be in keeping with the character of their neighbourhood, how would you ensure that council staff alone aren't left to make decisions which can override the objections of neighbours and the broader community? We have Lisa Enterman.
I just want to follow on from Stephen's comment first about 2 years in a role and enthusiasm follows. Well, we've got a 2 year and 9 month, I think, term ahead of us. It's usually not the 4 years. As I've mentioned to you before, I've been in the wings doing the councillor work for a long time, 6 years as deputy, keen as mustard to get in there and do the mayor's job and bring some great ideas to the role, and also teamwork and cohesiveness to the councillors. I don't agree that it's 5 councillors who make a decision. Really fantastic if you get everybody agreeing. That's the challenge. Get people together and discussing their differences, their points of view, and coming up with something that everybody can live with and live happily with. The question relates to development applications are primarily decided on just by council staff. Absolutely, but they follow the state government rules and they follow the adopted LEP, local environmental plan of council. So therefore, they don't just arbitrarily decide. Only major or controversial developments are even made known to councillors. Sometimes never. I would make sure that councillors were in fact all advised when a controversial development application was as close to receipt as possible, and definitely before it went out for exhibition. I would make sure that developments such as the one last week that was dealt with by the Development Assessment Panel, 1 Hill Street, was in fact advertised widely because it is a controversial and groundbreaking development under a new height regulation. I would make sure that there was that better notification, that there was actually a community representative on the Development Assessment Panel, so that we did have a community voice there. I would do all of those things. It's a combination of things to make sure that staff don't make decisions alone, but also, and more importantly, that we make the right plans to begin with that staff then assess developments against. Thank you.
Development assessment panels and joint regional planning panels are a derivative from state government because they wanted to take the planning powers away from councils. And there was a good reason for that. And the reason was because there were people who were cashing in and doing deals, and Aldi bags were being swapped, and you know, there was all this untoward stuff going on. So, you know, to make it more transparent, they actually took it away. That doesn't mean to say that it improved the process. It just took it away from the coalface of the councillors who were there to front the community, who were exasperated by the development that happens right next door to them, which often than not really impacts severely on their life. I made it my mission, as did Sharon Griffiths, that we would go to every development assessment panel meeting we could, and when we couldn't physically be there, when COVID happened, we dialed in. So I was aware of what the concerns were of the community and what they were putting up to panel members. We had a couple of guys who started pushing back on developers and planners and even the staff, because we have a staff member sit on a DAP, a development assessment panel. And then we retired them out and we've got a new set. And the thing is, the developers know the rules. When you know the rules of the game and how to play it well, you always win. And developers know this because this is their business, this is their game. And this is, as a community, what we're not understanding is there is just so much, you know, leeway for a developer. We have to set the agenda. We can only do that through, again, I'll say, reviewing our urban growth management strategy, our development control plans and our local environmental plans, so we can work with developers to actually build a better community rather than destroy a beautiful region. Thank you.
Yes, so again, certainly agree that we need to be setting that agenda, and that agenda shouldn't include cutting green tape. And when we're looking at revising those strategies that will indeed be shaping exactly these points. So when we're talking about keeping in character with the neighbourhood, development that keeps in character with the neighbourhood. So precisely that point is actually addressed in the draft housing strategy. And that's one of the key points, and there's a range of actions as part of an implementation plan to make sure that that is actually brought about. I've got lots of concerns about that housing strategy, but that isn't one of them because it's really well articulated, and I do think that there's actions articulated that would bring that to fruition. The local environmental plan, I believe, is Grant's probably knows this better than me, but I believe that it's coming up for review within council very shortly. That's really significant because that's one of our community opportunities to say we want development to happen like this, or like this, or like this. And once those rules are in place, the developers' agenda to some extent is being set for them. So it's our opportunity to stipulate this is how we want development to happen in the future. So when we're talking about community engagement, when we're talking about discussion of these controversial developments, or even possibly non-controversial developments, what we actually need is a firm process to make sure the community are made aware of developments or anything that we would reasonably suspect they'd be interested in. And a part of the role of the mayor is actually to help our community understand and to be able to put it in accessible terms. So if there's a clear misunderstanding within the community about council's role, that's something the mayor should be actively addressing. One of the actions that I've been planning to bring forward as a part of our community engagement plan is making sure after every council meeting that there is a really clear brief for our community, putting in accessible language what decisions were made and why particular people might be interested. That needs to be carried out in a way that's non-partisan and on behalf of the council body, not on behalf of personal beliefs.
Nick Littleback.
Greg, I need to swap some numbers. I can't keep following Rachel every time. It's not helping my cause. So this question closely relates to question 4 as well. And we're talking about transparency again. It's the key when council decisions are made, and it's time to make sure this happens naturally. Of course, all stakeholders, their views need to be listened to, and the right decision made based on all the feedback. So we need more information, whether it's a controversial DA or whether it's not so controversial. We need more information for council staff to provide councillors more details on what's happening, and then we can also relay that information back to the community. All about transparency, all about more information. We keep harping back to the fact that we don't know what's going on. Where's the details? Where's the information being provided? In addition to that, the time it's currently taking for DAs to be approved, it's a little bit too long. I understand there's probably a lot of work going on as well. And again, the new council needs to put in those KPIs on those key roles, as I said previously. So basically, in summary, I look forward to working together with the new council team to see what can be done. And unlike the incumbent mayor and deputy mayor, I don't have an extensive knowledge, particularly in this regard, but they do. So I'm keen to work with them and the entire team to find the right outcome for our community. Thank you.
Stephen Gates.
Thank you. I think my colleagues have all spoken very well on the issue, and there's not much that I can add to that, except to say that I think there is some intervention that can come from the elected body through the CEO, and that is particularly on the time it takes for development applications to be approved. I'll give you one example. I live in Bybarra. We go to the Bybarra Cafe. You should go there. I'll give them a plug. Great place. Great food, views on my property, it's really nice. Anyway, they put in a DA, they wanted to produce beer there. Great, employs more people locally, gets more people coming into the economy. They were told it was going to take 3 years for a DA to make beer. Are you serious? How can it possibly take 3 years? What are they doing, council? Well, I don't know. So there needs to be some, if you're running a business and it took you 3 years to make a decision for a client, you'd be out the door. You know, we need to get serious. They need to develop a bit of a business focus, and they need to remember that they're public servants. They are there to serve the public, and the core of council is to provide services to ratepayers, not the other way around. Thank you.
Our last question comes from Robert Bird.
Thanks for the opportunity to ask these questions. Who saw the ABC Four Corners program a couple of weeks back? That's where I learned about the high-rise apartment developments proposed for Pacific Drive. And I live just over here in Barrawong Street, a block and a half away. That's where we learned our council has been considering high-rise apartment development along Pacific Drive. That's where most residents in Port learnt about these proposed developments from a TV program.
The ABC.
Four
You
corners.
got it, baby. You got it.
Yeah.
Camera on one. Four corners. No transparency.
Yeah. So my specific question is, the council, the new mayor, you have it in your powers to stop this development. All you need to do, I ask you, is will you stop the sale of council land that these developers need to build their apartment towers? We don't want it. You can stop it. Will you stop that sale of council land? The meetings that have gone on in private with developers, I'm glad to hear that many of you are now committing to make those meetings more public. So, thank you.
Particularly radio beats.
David Gates.
I was hoping I might get last on that one. Look, feel rested that I don't have a story to tell on this one. No story, but I do have some interesting facts to give you. Look, I was equally alarmed as everyone else when I heard of the EDOB connection. And I understand where you're coming from with it. I would say that if the decision has been validly and lawfully made by those council officers, then it needs to stand. And sometimes developers will have discussions with council to move this pump there onto this land or to convert that from a house to a parkland. And that's part of the process. I think there's an issue with the transparency of the process. I think there's an issue with you having a high rise and not knowing about it and finding it out through television. The ones that I'm more interested in, I'm a very inquisitive person, is three things. One is why council decided to sell Bill Hill Road here, 1.9 kilometres, approved by the elected body. Why it decided to sell Granny Bell Lane, a sealed road, to one of the property owners, and why they required that property owner to establish a right of way for those people who use that road as well. They're against the policy of council for the disposal of assets. It's against the Roads Act to not maintain a road. The other one I want to know is why council decided to gravel resheet someone's private driveway.
When did that happen?
I'll give you the exact dates of when it happened. So what I did is I put in 2 GIPRA applications, freedom of information request. I sold 2 cows to fund it because council insisted that I pay $4,200. So when you say, who's fighting on your team? I'll tell you that I'm fighting on your team. You've got bigger issues to be worried about than OB for what's happening in council and why. Thank you.
I'm going to disagree with you, Steve, because, and I don't want to look like I can't work with people, but I do need to disagree with you because you have no idea what you're talking about. And the other thing is, when it comes to roads, I've grown up with my husband, who for 35 years has worked in the road industry and was almost decimated by Port Macquarie Hastings Council and the councillors. So he had to take them to the Supreme Court. And when they used ratepayers' money to fight, to hide what they didn't know that they were doing, and present company involved, he had to fight them when they appealed. So there is more to council than just roads. There's a lot of other stuff going on in there. You have to be very concerned about this deal. I'm privy to what this deal is about. And I tell you what, when the documents are released, there's going to be some very serious questions asked. So if I was in that room that day making those decisions, I would be very, very concerned. The other thing is that this development cannot go ahead without this land, and the community has not yet seen the deal finished 5 years later. There's a lot of questions to ask, and in fact, there needs to be an inquiry into exactly what's going on here. People can refute, people can say they didn't know, but all the documents were tabled, so the councillors who actually were in the room that day, they knew full well who the applicant was, what it was for, and if they say they didn't, then they didn't do their homework and they didn't read their papers. Thank you.
I was in the room. I will certainly stand by the decision that we made. The Mayor has just made statements that are half-truths, that she does not know the full story. I'm more than happy for an inquiry to happen. The decision that was made was controversial, but absolutely there was no wrongdoing. There are things that I would do better. I would make sure that, like we've been talking before, make sure that the community knew that if that road was closed, then it would be sold. That was, to my way of thinking, now, in hindsight, the only thing that was done wrong. What has happened since is more important to you people than what happened in that particular meeting. This question has got a number of things wrong. Number one, there was no private meeting that I attended, certainly, or that councillors attended, when it was agreeing to the terms of the sale. What happened precisely was that, and these minutes have gone out from the council in last week's, everyone has access to them. Well, it was agreed that if the road was closed, that we go through the process of closing the road. If the road was closed, then upon the closure of the road, the general manager would negotiate directly with the owner. This is public knowledge. So these words they're not right. Will I ensure that all similar proposals are dealt with in public in the future? Stephen's raised some questions about Bill Hill and Grannyville Lane, but they were very similar, and in all three cases, it was illogical to go to any other than the neighbouring party. I just want to close by saying I would welcome an inquiry, Madam Mayor, and let's see exactly what went on. Thank you.
You were there.
Nick Clipperby.
Let's have an ICAC council inquiry.
So to answer your three-question question, yes, yes, and yes, in summary. What are the full facts? We still don't know. We understand, in fact, there are more owners involved than just the Abeg family, so we need further investigation. Having little knowledge of what happened, as many of us do, behind closed doors on March 15, 2017, and of course these documents are still locked up. I certainly do support the cancelling of this proposed sale, which has been with council taking all the risk and the development none. That's at 10 to 16 Pacific Drive. And yes, myself, and I'm sure all of us running as mayor, will absolutely insist on disclosure of these minutes. And yes, all similar proposals in future must also be dealt with the public going forward as well. So again, yes, yes, and yes. Thank you.
Rachel Shepherd.
I think an inquiry inquiry sounds like a great idea. It's very easy in a campaign for us to throw around claims and allegations about different people, and of course that has certain impacts on a campaign, right? And so an inquiry that supports a really considered, measured and comprehensive investigation will allow full consideration of what actually happened, who's involved. My initial reaction after watching the Four Corners episode is that, geez, if it takes a Four Corners episode to investigation to get this out, it'd be pretty hard for the councillors to know. That was actually my perspective. And to some extent, I hold, as far as I know, I think that's quite reasonable. And the bigger issue here is how, there's of course the issue of corruption and vested interests generally, and whether we take in an alignment with the interests of developers or of the interests of our community more broadly. There is also the issue, again, basically of community engagement. So I think it's very reasonable to think that council staff and councillors should have, pub test, would people have been interested in knowing about this? And actively seeking targeted community engagement so the community understand actually what's going on. Sure, sometimes things actually do need to be behind closed doors. That's actually the reality, and that legal and valid decisions do sometimes get made behind closed doors. But if our community doesn't trust our leaders, that makes that a very, very difficult issue. So, in short, I'd be supporting all legal available paths to increase transparency regarding this issue. I think an inquiry is a great idea, and I really encourage our community to engage quite thoroughly with this before coming to conclusions about whose interests were at play.
We'll now have some closing remarks from our candidates. They'll have 2 minutes each, beginning with Peter Pinson.
Thank you for coming out tonight and listening to all the candidates. Everybody is going to stand before you and say what they have to offer. What I have to offer is the inside knowledge and my life experience over the last 4 years. I also have the experience before I came into council of how council was actually doing its business. I wasn't surprised when I came in after I was elected that I was right when I was on the outside. I've fought really hard for this community, and sometimes I've been a lone voice. The majority of the time I've had the support of Sharon Griffiths. I'm just asking for the support of a team so we can actually get infrastructure on the ground. We are grossly under-delivering for our community. More people coming every day. Our dollar is losing its value whilst it stays locked up in the bank. Our rates are increasing, and our rate income is increasing for council. We're not delivering the basics like the footpaths and the cycleways, and we're certainly not providing an upgrade in our water and sewer. We nearly ran out of water in 2019. It was that dire. We were at the highest water restrictions that this area had ever seen. We want to look at increasing the dam wall out of Kawara and having a filtration plant so we're not reliant on only pumping water from our river when there's not high turbidity or high nutrient level. I've got the experience. I've done this for 4 years. It's been difficult without a team. I'm asking for you to consider us, Group D, Team Pinson, and to give me a second term as mayor, because we've only got 2 years, 8 months. It's not long enough for a brand new council or a brand new mayor to get us up to speed with what we've got to recover from bushfires, droughts, floods and COVID. Thank you.
Stephen Gates.
The problem with getting old is I wear my reading glasses these days. There was a time when I didn't have to do that, unfortunately. I love when people talk about roads and how council knows what it's doing, because it's a really good example that council has absolutely no idea what it's doing. An example. I went in council's office and I asked for a copy of the roads register. It's a statutory requirement, section 163 of the Roads Act, that you must maintain it available during normal business hours. They couldn't produce it. They didn't know what it was. I went in the second day, asked the same thing. They still couldn't produce it. They ended up giving me one. The one that I've got is now on the council's webpage. The interesting to note, if you note nothing else from tonight, note this one point. That document should tell you exactly which road council owns and the exact distance. They have 154 roads on there that they say unknown ownership. Are you serious? They have roads from adjoining councils on there they're saying they're own. They have no idea what's going on in council. When people say to me, I don't know the facts, that's a great challenge. Well, let me tell you, what's getting published this week is 16 podcasts from the Port Macquarie Hastings Community Against Ratepayer Exploitation Incorporated. Those 16 podcasts exposed the facts. They will show exactly what council's been doing or not doing. It will show why Rawdon Island Ridge failed due to council negligence. It'll go through how a rich council is. It'll go through the potential class action against council, probably for $200 million to $500 million. And I'll set out why that exists. We talk about council accountability and the levels of service, something they've been ducking since 2009. Why sealed roads are failing, unsealed roads. It's something you should go and have a look at. It is simply fact-based. I don't make a judgment. Go and have a look at it. It's on our website in the next couple of days. Thank you.
I want to continue on the previous comment, the previous topic, and just to illustrate to you, I suppose, that complaining just without doing anything takes us nowhere. Last Thursday, I addressed the Development Assessment Panel on 1 Hill Street, which is the parallel development to 10 Pacific Drive that we've just been talking about, up the other end of Pacific Drive. Because I and 3 other residents addressed the Development Assessment Panel, I believe that we changed their mind. They have now deferred that for improvements, 4 kinds of improvements to that property. It doesn't address the height in a great manner, but it does address the floor space ratio, the bulk and scale of the building. So they will now have to, the developers will now have to go back and redesign and come back to the Development Assessment Panel. Similarly, next Thursday, 2 days away, this Thursday, I and around about 20 others will be addressing the Northern Regional Planning Panel regarding the 10 Pacific Drive development. Don't complain. Don't vote for somebody who just complains. Vote for people who actually get up there and do something. And my hope, my sincere hope, is that on Thursday, 2 days away from today, when around about 20 residents address the Northern Regional Planning Panel, that development will be either deferred or refused. If that is the case, then we can do something about what that previous question was about. Do not vote for complainers, vote for people who will actually do something, and I can assure you that I would not still be on council if all I was there to do was complain. I want to make our lives better, and I've been in service to do that for many years now. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Greg, again for putting this on for us.
Why should you vote for me? Look, it is important to me that I name what I consider shortcomings or limitations in the team that we have. And I have spoken to a couple of those tonight, and in reference specifically to how I think I bring something forward. And I think to some extent that's been demonstrated as well. That's one of the things I bring to this space as mayor, is I have a really good capacity to recognise the strengths and the limitations of the people I'm working with. And most importantly, absolutely where it's needed, I'm happy to call that in a respectful way when we need to name limitations as they are. However, throughout my entire life, my focus has been on how do we leverage off the strengths of someone. Whenever we ask for a solution, whenever we look for a solution, that's what we end up getting. Whenever we look for a problem, that's what we end up getting, right? It's relatively basic when we're thinking about the psychology of change. So what I bring to the table is the capacity to look at who we have here and see we have someone in Nico who is incredibly connected with the community in ways that no one else here is. I see someone with experience in corporate knowledge that will be needed by this very fresh council. I see someone who actively went to every single community meeting they could because that was what was really important to them and how they wanted to lead. And I see someone who has a great deal of knowledge about council, and I really wish that Stephen were running as a councillor and think his knowledge would have been a great part of the team. So if you want someone who's able to see and bring the best out in the people that they're working with, I think I'm the type of person you want. If you want someone who wants a sensible, sustainable approach to progress for our region and wants to bring people together and how we achieve that, doesn't want to take up particular issues and divide us over it, but instead go, okay, where's the common ground? Let's focus on that. Yes, let's talk about the tough stuff. Let's nut out what we have to, but in the end, we want something similar for our future, and we need someone who can bring us together on that.
Nick Lipperdale.
Thank you once again. So the last few weeks, months, have been enlightening for all of us, running to be your new mayor and councillors. We've heard your concerns, shared your passions, listened to your stories, and you've heard lots of stories from the candidates here tonight as well. Your decision between now and December 4 is one only you can make, but it's a decision which will not only impact you in the next term or two, but for future generations. We're talking about getting in there, making the plans, and making sure not only your kids, but your kids' kids in 40, 50 years will also benefit from what's happening in this term of local government. So it's time to show you that with me as your mayor and a committed, popularly elected team, I commit to bringing all the important stuff: transparency, openness, honesty, integrity to you, the community, to the ratepayers. It's what you want and expect, and together we'll make this amazing LGA even more amazing over the years ahead. So, repeating my little call as to who you should vote for, if you haven't worked it out yet. So, vote 1, we say above the line Group B. Our team of 5 local independents are made up of people with extensive experience in business, finance, education, infrastructure, communication, and also strong links to local community and sporting groups. Vote 1, Nick Lipperdale for mayor. Lipperdale just rolls off the tongue. Put the Hastings First on December 4. Not only December 4, do it tomorrow if you're pre-polling as well. Don't forget about that. For more details, head to the website hastingsfirst.com.au. hastingsfirst.com.au. Let us help you achieve what we all want, and that's a better LGA and a better future for our local area as well. So again, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Please thank all of our candidates for coming tonight. And thank you all for coming. Good night.
Thank you, Greg. Good night. Thank you, Mert.